What's up guys, it's Drac and it's time for a slightly biased review. Now on this channel we've done a lot of reviews and they've all been honest reviews, and I take great pride in that. I think that there's a lot of integrity that comes from making reviews from an expert perspective with both like marketing and industry and like tinkering knowledge along with like a ton of hobby knowledge and event knowledge. So like I really strive very, very hard to within this community collect little bits and pieces. I'm not the best at or the smartest in anything at all, but I try to be halfway decent at everything so I can give you guys a really good, honest opinion, unbiased, with like having tasted all the tastes and tried all of the different parts, manufacturers, etc., and used them all in actual various different scenarios. That's a very long-winded way of saying I nerf a lot. Anyway, this will be my first slightly biased review, and I'm going to get that bias out of the way. These are called Fang motors. Now, they're Fang motors from Foam Blast, and you can see the magnets in them are actually so strong that they can daisy chain together. These are really tough motors. That's because they're 132 sized cans, which means that in theory they could fit inside a stock shell with no modifications. However, they're between 130 and 180 size, so they're not quite so large that they jut out, but they're not quite so small that they fit comfortably, which means that most people will be using expanded battery trays for them. Now, the Fang motors are the highest torque, the absolute like highest performance single stage motors right now on the market. They do require a 3S LiPo, so that's like the one downside for me, is that obviously I love doing these 2S builds so that I can use my graphene batteries. I have a bunch of graphene batteries that fit very nicely into stripes. They're graphene 2S 950 milliamp batteries. They're really, really nice. So for these I'm going to have to use 3S batteries, which impart more voltage to the motors, which is necessary for the performance that they get. All of that is fine. Now, they work very well, and get the highest FPS of any single stage setup in, I believe, 42.5 millimeter open flywheel cages with worker serrated wheels, which is long-winded and kind of nonsense. So instead, we're not going for the absolute highest slaughterfest performance. I just want to review these motors. I want to show you that they are truly right now, if you're only using one set of motors for your flywheels, just mathematically the best motors to use, and they're named after me. This is not a coincidence. I worked with the ladies over at Foam Blast, and when they were done designing these motors and knew that they were going to be off the chain, they decided to name them after the only nerfer that could I can't. Anyway, they are though. They are the fastest, highest torque motors. They deliver the best performance. Now, we will be using parts from my good friends over at Containment Crew, because people who went to End War are special friends of mine, and I love the shout out, and I really appreciate the hookup. So Containment Crew printed these off for me. These are translucent orange pieces for the Desolator. The Desolator just doesn't get a lot of love, guys. That just is what it is. So it's a motor cover. These would be 180 motor covers, but they'll comfortably fit the Fangs. It just snaps over the original back end here. And my favorite thing about this is see how there are ribs here? This actually aligns with those lines and comes through to the barrel. That's something that EOC does in a lot of his designs, which again, Containment Crew should be selling by the time that this video goes live. So EOC is of course my employee and partner, and he and I have been working together on a lot of different designs for like stripes and such, and we really try and follow the lines of the shell through the blaster in its 3D printed parts. This is the same and looks very nice. The cage is translucent, which is actually really cool in this case because you can see it through the translucent orange window, and then this seems to be just an improved pusher with that same ultra glossy finish. So since this is a 43 millimeter cage, these are going to fit in and not be like the ultra crazy crush variety, but should be very nice as well. And then of course, if we're going to use this, I think that we have to use the Cyclone wheels from Containment Crew, which are their proprietary flywheels, which they have machined and are for Nerf purposes specifically. So all of that said, Containment Crew did tease me at End War, and they gave me this as a gift. They told me that I was too old school, which is very much like the dead, and they said that it would be much, much faster for me in modifying things if I started using this guy to unscrew all of my shells instead of a regular screwdriver. So this is a really neat thing. I guess it's what they use in their workshop. It is a Black & Decker power drill of sorts, but I think that it's low enough torque that this attachment right here fits inside and should be long enough to hit most Nerf shells. It also looks like it's rechargeable via micro USB. Thanks so much, Containment Crew. This is going to be great if it works. Let's go. Well guys, true to form, that was just incredibly easy. Highly recommend the Black & Decker drill. Oh my goodness, why have I been doing things by hand for so long? Alrighty guys, so as you were well aware, the Desolator is basically a strife inside. This Black & Decker drill is awesome. So we can pull this off, and you guys will get a decent look at the rev switch in here, which of course we're gonna gut completely. Then we have the leads to the original battery tray, which again, we will eventually gut completely. This is gonna come off. I think that I've done a modification guide for this now. You'll be able to see that sadly, this is not an exact copy of the Strife's cage, which means that it's a good thing that Open Flywheel Project designed a cage specifically for the Desolator, and that's exactly what Containment Crew has printed off here. You can kind of get a look at what I was talking about in terms of the motors here. These motors are much smaller. They are what is known as 130 size motors, and they come stock. These are going to be a little bit larger, which is why we'll be expanding out this side of the shell. Now, this is all in all going to be very, very simple. We will come in here, isolate these internals. These are actually important internals, so we're going to set them off to the side, both the trigger and the pusher mechanism. However, you'll be able to see here that Containment Crew has sent an improved pusher thrower here for this, in that I think it sticks out just a little bit further so that it'll accommodate more types and worn darts, and then it also has this piece which prevents the darts from flopping up. So we will replace with this. Also, it gives us a little more trans orange in that that working mechanism cage, which is kind of cool, just kind of goes with the theme, but that'll be a direct replacement. Now, as far as the fangs themselves go, we're gonna align them in. I have some tiny, tiny screws that I'll use to cinch them into this 3D printed cage, and then we'll start working on replacing this entire housing. Again, we're getting rid of the stock motors, the stock cage, and the stock wheels, so we actually don't need anything from this. If we were doing a basic overhaul, we would gut the boards, remove the boards, carbon brush the motors, and take this entire rubber flap off. As is, all we really need are the silver screws to lock it back in when it's done. Let's go. Alrighty guys, so we're over here with all of my materials. My one regret is that once the Fang cans are inside the cage, you can no longer read Fangs. It just says F. Anyway, we come in from the other side here, and I've got these ultra tiny screws. They are Phillips head screws. Got these from my friend Coat Duck. I think she buys them in bulk. And then you come in through the other hole here. I wish I had a slightly smaller screwdriver, but this should drive these. And you lock into the cans without cracking the plastic here. Now, the best way that I've got to store these is I actually hide them inside painter's tape. So I will need 3 more, and this video is going to be long. I've decided that while I could time-lapse through all of it, there are very few proper demonstrations of how to build a flywheel cage assembly like this, and normally I just speed through it, but sometimes I'll get questions like, "Dear Drac, why'd you just speed through it?" And since if you watch all of my videos, this process is a little bit derivative, that's normally the most polite way to do it. But since this is a component review, it makes a lot of sense to come in and show you guys exactly how this goes down, step by step. No time-lapse vampire speed magic. So these are the motors getting locked in. This reduces their vibrations and prevents them from rattling around in the shell. since they're not like crazy tight like in stock Nerf cages where you have to like push the motors in, this is much better. Now, this is another trick here. You have to make absolutely sure that the concavity of these flywheels lines up with the OFP cage. I'm having a hard time doing that while showing you on camera, but you'll see that I'm going to push it onto the pinion here. I'm going to do that in a way that'll be difficult for you guys to see, and once I've got it exactly where I want, I'll show you again. The motor isn't contacting anything, neither is the flywheel itself, and we have perfect concavity. And I honestly don't know what you do if you push too hard and go past where you want it to be. I just try and controlled push slowly so that I never have to take them off. And that is exactly where we want those to be. See how they're mirrored? And since they're precision-made flywheels, we know that they're balanced. Again, these are not the regular Cyclones. They are the regular Cyclone dimensions, but these have been laser etched with the Containment Crew logo and my End War Events logo. How cool is that, guys? You can get a real feel for how incredible the detail on this laser etching is. These were sold out at the event like that because they are just that nice, they are that unique, and they are that cool. But these are the End War Cyclone wheels. You cannot buy these anymore, which makes them very, very special in my opinion. Now this is 16 gauge silicone wire. I use this for virtually all of my flywheel builds, and I'm going to show you how to do proper NASA style soldering. And all I have to do is grab this really quick, and you guys should be able to see how to do this. Now, I do have a really nice soldering iron from my good friend Joe, but I'm going to be using this cheap one because honestly, that's probably what you guys will be using. So, I'm going to kind of measure here. This is my cathode, or anode. A little bit extra, not too much. So we'll knock that down and snip. There, and snip. And then realistically we can cut a little bit more of this insulation off because I like to do this what I consider to be electrically and mechanically more sound and proper. The technically correct way is to give yourself a bridge in the center so that you can use the NASA style or the NASA specifications for soldering on all of your joints, not just one of them. So you can see I've got a little bit exposed in the middle, and I've got these flayed ends on the edge. Now, what makes NASA grade soldering so nice is that it's both electrically sound, proper capillary action soldering, and it is mechanically sound in that you twist the wires around themselves and through where you're soldering. So I use lead-free solder. A lot of people give me garbage about that. However, I like my lungs a whole bunch. So just to be abundantly clear here, we're taking the middle piece and we're pushing it through the motor's lead. Then we're going to come up, twist once, bring this into the fold. These are jeweler's pliers, which makes this process a whole lot easier. Hopefully the 4K is helping, guys. If it is, I really hope that this video serves you well. And then we kind of use the pliers to make sure that all of these wires bundle together and twist so they've effectively now been braided around the motor lead, which means that this is a very strong bond, even like before soldering necessarily. So then we're going to come in, we're going to tin our soldering iron, and mine's a little bit dirty, but that's okay. I don't use this one too terribly often. Then we're going to apply heat to one end, and then we're going to use capillary action to pull the solder through the wire mesh like so. And you guys can see that that is a complete solid piece of metal at this point, and it is ready to go. So that is rock solid. Now, I could show you exactly how I'm going to do all 4 of those the same exact way, but I'm going to instead tell you that I will do all 4 of them exactly the same way. The only difference being that I have black wire of the exact same specifications that I'll use for this side, and then we'll pull leads off. So I'll come back to you when it's time to get the leads off, but right now, as soon as this loom is done, the motor cage will be ready to install. Alrighty guys, so as you can see, the Fang motors and the containment crew cage, as well as the pusher, have all been installed. The orange looks great. Mechanically fastening this piece on here was super duper easy because all we had to do was come in and carve out a giant hole to hold our motors, and then just use regular Nerf body screws to ensure that this would be all set and ready to go. So everything else is pretty simple. We still have leads coming out here, but we can attach our XT60 connector on after we button it up. So I'm going to get it all put together, but our switch is installed down here. You can see everything's been polysilicate set into place, and then the wires come up and through the original channel and down. Now the one downside to using these wires is that you get a little bit of bowing out here, but that is not the end of the world. It just means that the magazines are going to be pretty tight. Let's put it back together. Alrighty guys, so this is it. The Doomlands Desolator overhaul with Fangs is complete. And I mean, this thing really reaches out and touches people. Like, oh my goodness, crazy for a single stage blaster. Check it out. Like that's pretty serious. Like, we're talking 70 feet-ish. Angled would be, I mean, when you shoot angled, they just disappear. They're gone. That's nuts. Crazy, crazy cool. So one perk, of course, of the translucent orange plastic here is that the Desolator showcases the motor cage. So you can see that it's a really cool translucent orange motor cage in there, and you can check out those awesome End War flywheels. Super sick of Containment Crew to hook us up with those. Also, because this is translucent, you can actually see the fangs through the other side of it. So I really dug the mechanical fastening here. I cannot tell you how refreshing it was not to have to wait for epoxy to cure. Cut a hole, laid this in, drill, done. Super special, awesome. I mean, it's not a perfect color match. I'm sure they could have gotten a better color match, but I really like that the translucent orange here, matches the pusher. And again, like, you can see that this pusher is holding down the dart in the magazine there so that it will always chamber perfectly. And that is in and of itself really, really cool. I mean, very, very... I love this thing so much. I mean, it's not painted, but I really like the look of it in the first place, so I mean, I'm very happy with that. The only thing that I have left to do is I need to come in and sign it in enamel, but I mean, this is just a powerhouse primary, like delivering pure power. LiPo, 2 Fang motors gives you an awesome single stage blaster with a comfortable built-in stock. That cage is no joke, guys. I don't know why it wasn't moving the blaster board target, but all of those were on point. They all hit. If I have to slow it down to prove that, I am more than happy to do so, but this is very, very cool. Oh, I'm so tempted to keep this blaster now, but I'm gonna have to decide. I'll decide by the end of the video. I legitimately really love building these custom Desolators, but I already have one that I made. So tough. I want to point out that last shot went through the target, even if it did not necessarily spin anything, just because the target is already open. Now, one slight hassle here is that the way that I use higher gauge wire to ensure optimal performance, and I do not actually carve that out. You do get slight bowing up there. I mean, it's a tight fit, but not the end of the world. So very happy with that overall. Super low profile with a 6 mag in it. Nuts. Such a great blaster. So happy with how this turned out. I could provide you with like useless and arbitrary mathematical data to prove that these are ultra high torque motors and they're achieving incredible FPS, blah, 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 blah. But I'm like a performance player. I care about how it reacts. I care about how it handles. I care about how easy they are to install and work with. This was a super easy build, very easy to install. The parts from Containment Crew, top shelf. The motors from Foam Blast,
are literally the best ones on the market right now if you're only using a single stage, which means one flywheel cage in your blaster. And I mean, it handles very well. It delivers the hits. It's a very sweet setup and system. This is the next generation of strifes, the Doomland, like Impact Zone Desolator / like Demolisher, etc. Like, they keep evolving with time, but this will work just as well in a strife as it will in here. Like, these are optimal motors, and this setup is very, very good in the open flywheel cage. So, I mean, my good buddy Bobololo has an incredible video breaking down the math and the numbers of why these motors are really good. But if I'm going to do a motor review, I'm going to build something really sweet. I'm going to take it out here. I'm going to put it through its paces, and that's how I want to review the motors. I want to give you guys an actual practical look at what they can do from an expert perspective. So these are sweet. This blaster is awesome, and I can't actually hold on to it. It deserves to be taken into battle regularly, and that's something that with my armory I just can't provide. So I'm going to put this up on my eBay. I will link in the description box below. The bidding will, as always, start at 99 cents because Macklemore, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this build video. I hope that you guys like these motors. Obviously, I've only made one of these blasters for you to purchase on eBay, so if you're planning on modding your very own, yes, you will have to upgrade to 3S lipos. No, that isn't the end of the world. You can see with very minor bowing out, I managed to fit a 3S lipo in the actual battery tray very, very easily. So highly recommend checking out the Foam Blast website, picking up a pair of these motors of your own, installing them in something sweet, and just making an absolute powerhouse flywheel primary. Much love, Nerf on, Drac out.